You're listening to the Business of Pharmacy podcast with me, your host, Mike Koelzer. Well, hello, Gavin and Andrew.
Hello.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, guys, for those who haven't come across you or your business, introduce yourself. Tell the listeners what we're talking about today.
Yeah, so I'm Gavin Buchanan, and this is my co-founder, Andrew. I'll let him jump in a second, but essentially we've created an adherence solution that's built for pharmacies in order to help reduce DIR fees, increase patient retention, improve the patient experience with taking a prescription medication, and just make sure that the things are running smoothly with pharmacy operations. And the reason that we started this business, and something that we can get to more later in this conversation, is really due to our personal experiences with medication non-adherence. Myself losing a family member to not taking his medication, and using that experience to create something that should and will help patients manage their medications more properly and put systems in place that allow for real-time health interventions to happen, and incentivize for people to take their prescriptions correctly. So that's a little bit about what we're doing. We're launching at several independent pharmacies right now. And that's one of our passions, is providing the most value to independent pharmacy and to their patient bases, and getting into the hands of anyone who needs it.
I'm Andrew Aertker. I'm one of the co-founders of PatchRx.
You're relatively fresh out of college, right?
Right.
Correct.
And I know that you've got good sales training, because when I asked you, Gavin, about what was going on, you gave an answer that is the proper answer now for marketing, where you don't tell me about your product. I don't give a crap about your product. That's what people say. I want to know what benefits you give to me, right? So you were telling me all about the benefits of what this thing does. But you know what? I'm really interested in just what is this damn thing, because this is really cool, and we'll get to those benefits. And so I know I'm making you break your rules, because people said, don't tell them the product, tell them the real benefit. But what do you guys got here? This is like Bluetooth cool stuff, right? On a cap. What is this?
When we set out to create something that would improve adherence, we recognized that smart adherence solutions were the future. And when we talked with pharmacists, all over the nation, hundreds of pharmacists during our customer research, we found out that pharmacists had a few needs that would basically determine what kind of solution they would adopt. And the three major ones were: one, it had to be extremely simple and easy to integrate with their workflow. The second is that it had to not disrupt their supply chain. And the third was that it had to be extremely cheap. And when we looked at the landscape of smart adherence solutions that were out there, they didn't fall under any three of those categories. They replaced some form of the pill bottle cap or the pill bottle, or introduced a new form of packaging. They weren't necessarily intuitive or easy for new patients to just onboard and understand. And they were also very costly, double-digit or triple-digit solutions for these kind of technologies and devices.
I'm imagining, and I don't know if I have this right, but I'm imagining that some of these were like these things about the size of a big coffee can that would make the pills kind of come down like a gumball machine and spit them out and this and that. That's probably one of the expensive ones. And then this goes down to things like packaging and, basically a check mark, or maybe some way to text a button to your children that you took the medicine or something. Do I have that right as the two bookends, or what am I missing on the more deluxe side that is more expensive than what I'm thinking, or less than what I had just mentioned there?
Yeah, so they go all the way up to really complicated multi pharmacy solutions, where it might be a multi-pill sorter that I'm looking at, like Hero Health or EliGrid, both of which I think are $30 to $40 a month for a single patient for access to it, larger devices that can handle multiple medications and dispense them. Obviously something that might be of interest for, an elder who has the money and the wherewithal to use such a device, but definitely nothing that would integrate at the pharmacy level. And I think you're right, though, about the bookends of being on one side, kind of the higher end devices down to, simple software solutions.
Simple software. It's technology, but it's at its simplest form of checking off a spreadsheet or something like that, right?
Right. Exactly.
The people that are supposed to be in the know, it was probably going to be, I imagine, like a family member. Was your idea then to go back to a healthcare worker, whether it's a pharmacist or the doctor? What do you think the best program is? Who should be finding out about this?
So for us, one of the biggest things that we realized very quickly was how fractured this market is in healthcare in general. And so one of the biggest things that we wanted to do is streamline some of those operations between individual parts and individual entities. And so what we saw really was when you give patients more accountability, when you give people in their lives more insight into what's going on with their medications, as well as those that are involved directly in their healthcare, their physicians, their pharmacists, whoever it is, you're going to see much better results. And that was one of the biggest things that we tried to do, was make sure that all those pieces were connected. And this is the reason why we designed our product the way it was, to be easily integrated at the pharmacy level, to be able to universally fit onto any smart pill or any pill bottle for that matter. We wanted something that everyone could use and everyone could work with, and to streamline that communication between all these different parts.
Now our listeners are just salivating to try to find out what this is. This is a cap, right? It's not even a cap. It's a sticky thing that goes into the cap as a Bluetooth. Is that even close?
Yeah, you're right on the money there, Mike. It's, what we were surprised to find is that when we looked at these solutions, there was nothing that was universally fit for any size pill bottle, no matter where someone got it filled. And so what we created, and I'll show it up on my camera for you to see, Mike, but it can also be seen on our website or on our LinkedIn page, is the PatchRx device, which is just a small nickel-sized device that's small enough to fit into the pill bottle cap of any size pill bottle.
Turn that sideways, Gavin, too, for me. Let me see the edge of it. It's about the size of a quarter, and it's probably about the depth of a... Turn that again sideways. It's about the depth of maybe a half inch or 3/4 inch. It would basically fit into a cap and dip down a little bit maybe into the bottle.
Yeah, and I'm going to show you one from one of our partnered pharmacies up in North Texas. It just fits just like that, just on the underside of the pill bottle.
It just comes down a touch. Some pharmacies will maybe stack tablets, rarely, but if sometimes bottles will just fit the tablets and they'll jump on, they'll get up on the table and jump on it to crush the tablets into a bottle. It's not going to fit those, but the average fill of a vial, this is going to easily fit into the vial.
Right. And just to show you, we did a market review of all the pill vials that were out there and found that this one from Walgreens was actually the smallest one offered on the pharmacy market. And you can see I've got one in there. You can't even notice that it's attached, but once we open it up, it's just right there, right? So it fits.
It's about a 1620 dram, and it looks like it's a reversible top, and you've got that on the side as a safety cap. Does that go on the other side too? Will it stick onto the top on the other side?
Could fit on the other side if we wanted it to. Absolutely.
And I assume those are not throwaway. Those switch with the caps?
So they can be throwaway if the patient wants to.
Depends how much money you got, right? But let me ask this, can you reuse them?
They can be reused.
Do you reuse them by using the same cap, or can you pull them off that cap and put them in a new one?
So we would assume that they could be done either way. It somewhat depends on what the pharmacy wants when we're partnering with them. So the devices last for around 120 to 150 days.
You're looking at about a 3 or 4 month supply. These aren't going to be a 3-year kind of thing.
No, and they're meant to be at the end of that 90-day fill. When they get their next dose, they could either transfer that cap over. They can throw away the patient can throw away their bottle with our device in it. They're gonna get a new one on the new bottle, just because they're cheap enough, small enough to be like that.
They're gonna get a new one because they've signed up for the program or whatever.
Exactly right.
Wow, and I saw a QR code on the bottom of that.
Yep. So the way they add a medication, and we're working on making this more simplistic every day, but the way they add a medication is they just take a picture of their prescription label, pulls all the relevant information from it, and then they scan that QR code, and it matches that medication and its dosing time with that device.
Very interesting. The pharmacist is putting on basically a generic QR code, but then the patient themselves is taking a picture of the label and then a picture of the QR code. And I imagine it's just kind of like taking a picture of a check. You take a picture of the front and the back, and until you do both, you haven't matched them up.
Bluetooth Low energy.
And does that have a battery inside of it?
It does.
Like one of those watch battery kind of things, or something simpler than that?
Exactly, just a coin cell.
Tell me about the intellectual property, and also tell me about how specific you needed to get that intellectual property. So, for example, I imagine you're probably not just able to say a cool little device that helps people take their medicine better. You probably had to get something more specific for that, for your patent and so on. Give me some history on that.
So far, we've filed 4 patents on our device, and those kind of range. Obviously, we can't go into too much depth on some of the ones that haven't been approved yet, but on the patents that have been cleared, there's a couple different pieces that are really kind of what make it really differentiable from our competition, what make it really special in this marketplace in particular. One of the biggest things is just kind of the mechanical apparatus of it. We use kind of a myriad of different light sensors and some of these different pieces to actually judge whether the cap's being taken off. We also judge motion and these other pieces and kind of use the spikes and these different parameters to actually judge whether the cap is being taken off in that proper time and dosing window. One of the big things that we did very early on in this process was make some design iterations on different ways of understanding whether a patient is taking their medication or not. And so just to give you a little bit of history, when Gavin and I started this thing, we were both college freshmen. And so we were very early on in our college careers, and we had tons of free time. If you have school, but you have so much free time. And so Gavin and I really just spent the first 2 semesters of college, really in the library for 6 to 8 hours a day, kind of working on different iterations and playing with different models, learning how to do CAD and learning different electrical engineering techniques and all these different pieces. And what we kind of came up with was just a myriad of different designs of how this thing could actually work. Our first model was actually called the nodule, the no overdose module. And we designed it really kind of more as a system, a technique, and an actual twisting kind of motion. There has a gumball technique, kind of what you mentioned before. But we iterated on it, and we saw, as Gavin said, the different needs in the industry of, making something that is universal, making something that fit with every pill bottle, that was easy, that was understandable by every different kind of patient demographic. And that's kind of how we iterated and landed on the model that we have currently. But one of the biggest things that we did was look at the IP, what's surrounding our product, what else is out there, and how can we iterate on these different pieces that are already out there. And when we first looked at the IP landscape for our device, we saw that it was really wide open. There was so much space around kind of this niche area of designing this universally fit pill bottle cap that we decided to just go for it. And so we went for it. We filed several patents in that area. We've got one approved last year, kind of continuing to file continuation patents and everything. But the primary patents are really on, a lot of these different integral sensors and these kind of motions and inner workings of the actual device, as well as the communication mechanism and the data that we stream from it back to the patient and allow that communication, that direct communication.
Were you guys buddies before you got to college?
No, we met the first 2 weeks of college. We were across the dorm hall from one another.
Now, Gavin, sometimes I'll talk to people, and because I know you've got a lot of sales training already or marketing training, I can tell. A lot of times they'll say also, you got to bring all this stuff back to a story. Was it also like, hey, Andrew, we're going to start a business. Hey, let's do it on these 10 things. Oh, no, these 5 things. Oh, no, let's do it on this one thing. And then, come to think about it, my grandpa had a problem with this. Is that kind of how it went, that you guys wanted to start a business? Or was this truly like, hey, Andrew, my grandpa's having a hard time. I wish I could have helped him?
Yeah, it was. I think it was more of the second way, actually. We were, funny enough, both placed in the entrepreneurship hall at Trinity University. And on our first night,
I thought you were going to say solitary confinement or something like like you guys got in trouble right away.
No, we were in the entrepreneurship hall. And so I, with my engineering background and Andrew with his software development background, funny enough, hadn't really heard much about entrepreneurship hall, nor had I even been familiar with entrepreneurship just as a concept. Didn't really know what it meant to run a business, but they told us on the first night that we should start thinking about problems that we can solve that might be necessary and needed with our skill set. And I had just about a month earlier, my grandfather had passed away suddenly.
Sorry to hear that.
Thanks. It was one of those things that was shocking and just came out of nowhere. He was still really healthy and active, but one day forgot his heart medication, went out for a walk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then went out for a walk and his heart failed. And by the time he was found, it was too late. And it was one of those things that revealed what seemed like a critical failing in the healthcare system, in the sense that we put out something like 6 billion prescriptions every year, many of which are life-saving or life-changing. And yet, once we put them in the hands of the patient, we provide very little in the way for them to manage the medication, for them to track their doses, and practically nothing in the way of a real-time health intervention in the case that they miss a dose or if they overdose. So came into Trinity, and as of, I think it was August, and right like 2 weeks before that, the president had announced the opioid crisis as an official national emergency. And so it was, right in the public awareness of what was going on. And so when we were told that first night to start thinking about ideas that we might be able to turn into forces for social good and maybe turn into a business, I talked with Andrew later that night and said, I've got an issue that I think we could pretty easily solve, just because it doesn't look like there are many that are trying to meaningfully solve the issue and provide a solution. So we just started putting our heads together. We actually ended up trying not to pursue it in the entrepreneurship hall as a project, because we wanted to work on it on our own time, just as part of our own efforts. And it ended up being one of those things that Andrew can talk a little bit more about this, but he ended up finding his own personal reason for why, non-adherence was important to his life. That was greater than just our kind of combined efforts of trying to solve what felt like a big problem.
Would you have been stifled if you did it through that program? Was it kind of like American Idol, where they would have owned part of it or something? Why didn't you want to do it through the program?
I think because it just moved too slowly. We also had to create a team of people that were more than just myself and Andrew. And it was one of those things that we felt convicted to go and solve the problem on our own accord. And we didn't want to move at the pace that the class was moving. So we were wanting to just go, kind of full force and full speed ahead on the project. And by the time the class was over, and it was a 1-hour class, so it wasn't a huge commitment. So most people had just created a simple pitch deck with some concept art of what they might want to make, whereas we had already, created I think 2 iterations of prototypes and devices, and we're already starting the process of trying to file a patent. So we were thankfully able to make a lot more progress just doing it ourselves in our spare time. So.
Now, was it just a freak that you guys were in the same dorm, because you were studying different paths in college, right? You wouldn't have run into each other during class at all.
No, I don't actually think we ever even had a class together. So it was really a random thing.
Did you know you were going into this entrepreneur hall?
Neither of us did. No.
You're lucky they didn't put you in the ballet hall or something like that. You guys should have found out about this.
Right.
Someone didn't do enough homework about school. What project did you come up with for your class then?
So we ended up using this Yeah.
You just hid part of it, or
we just did it on our own time and also put it into the classwork as well. And one of the great things I think that Trinity University actually did for us was actually give us and provide us some resources very early on in terms of actually bringing this to fruition in a sense. There's a competition called the Stomberg Venture Competition, which they run every year. And it allows different student ventures to kind of come up and participate and compete for a prize. The first of which is a $5,000 prize for your team, and then a $25,000 prize. And we were able to go through both rounds of that and won a good chunk of money from that to kind of put us through and get some kind of prototypes developed. We really set into this in full steam ahead, really, kind of our second years at Trinity. Really kind of developing prototypes, developing iterations of it, and trying to find a niche that worked. Clinical trials was obviously one that we kind of looked at first and kind of iterated on that and went into pharmacy. And at the end of 2019, I was diagnosed with stage 2 appendiceal cancer.
Wow.
Which was a really interesting turn of events and really ruined my Christmas break too. But it was really a little bit of a blessing in disguise. Luckily, I'm on the other side of it to the, knock on wood. But, it's really interesting when you're diagnosed with something like cancer. There's a lot of things that kind of just come into the highlights in your life. And so you kind of see things in full clarity. And I think with Gavin and I diving deeper into healthcare and really kind of understanding the different parts that we could influence, being diagnosed with cancer, kind of allowed me to see what it meant to be adherent to medication, what it meant to be non-adherent to medication when it comes to something like oncology, which is so crucial for that entire field.
I wish you all the best on that, of course. Boy.
Thank you. Yeah, no, I mean, it's luckily, like I said, I had a couple major surgeries and have since been on the up and up, but it really was kind of an experience that really highlighted how important the work we were doing was. When you start to talk to doctors and you are constantly at MD Anderson, every couple months or so, you start to just when you're around the industry, you start to see kind of all the different pieces and all the streamline of communication and how these different pieces work. And it allowed me to really see and go back and work with Gavin on different ideas and concepts for how we could make our service just that much better, to how we could really influence this entire industry in really streamlining communication for proper medication management.
At one point, did you feel that you were getting good feedback and you weren't just blowing smoke to each other? I mean, I might have this good idea at home for my wife, but I've got the story going, 100 miles an hour in my head because I'm afraid to even bring it up because I know that it's got so many holes in it that it's not going to go anywhere. So I just enjoy my time as an imagination, as my little thing, because I know it's not going to go anywhere. But how quickly did you guys get this in front of a patient, a pharmacist, or a doctor and say, is this anything? And did you get any people that were so negative that it sort of let you down? Or did you get positive feedback?
I'll speak from the initial point of view, which was the research that we did, which a lot of people told us that it was a saturated market, that there were a lot of adherence solutions that had been made and were out there over the last couple of decades. But as of 2019, the average national adherence was still 50%, which was estimated to cause 150,000 deaths, 2 million hospitalizations, and something like $500 billion of cost of the healthcare industry. And so, with that, it seemed like the problem was far from being solved, especially in a meaningful way. And then when we started talking with pharmacists and we learned about how, they struggle with adherence themselves. And, when they struggle with adherence, it's often in the form of DIR fees. And those DIR fees have grown over the last decade over 45,000%. And they've become, a force that's causing pharmacies across the country to go into the red or go out of business.
Patients aren't compliant, and thus the numbers back to the insurers don't look good to say that Mrs. Smith is only getting her 30-day medicine every 43 days or something like that. Exactly.
And so it was really once we started talking with pharmacists and saying, can we create something that's low cost enough that we can launch it at your pharmacy? You can provide it to your patients for free. It provides all these benefits and incentives for the patient to use. And then with that, increase average adherence, and then lower those DIR fees and increase, the amount of refills per year, which, as as you can imagine, would increase prescription revenue, and just make the life of the pharmacist a bit easier, provide them with another form of contactless care and remote patient monitoring that gives them ease that their patient base is doing well. And so I think it was, once we started, talking with pharmacists, and as Andrew mentioned, our first go at this, our first solution, which we took to market in 2019, was Patch Trials, a clinical research solution for principal investigators to improve adherence within the clinical research that they were doing. And that felt like a great place to be. But
these are people that are doing like drug tests. And for those drug tests, it was so important to know, wait a minute, first let's find out if these people have actually taken this to then put it into our data to find out if it's good information to put into our studies, right? Their research.
Right, exactly. But I think, Andrew and I were much more fulfilled and interested when we were talking with the struggles that pharmacies are undergoing. It was an area that come January of 2020, almost a year ago, we didn't know a whole lot about this field and this world. And so we were absolutely blown away when we started talking and having conversations with pharmacists all over, right? Independent pharmacists, retail pharmacists, specialty pharmacists, and hearing the amount of work that they were doing on a weekly basis, the amount of effort, and just blood, sweat, and tears that they would put in for their patients, that seems to overwhelmingly go unnoticed, right? We find that pharmacists are usually put last when thought of when people think of primary care providers, and yet we think that the work that they're doing is absolutely essential and needed. And so once we had those conversations, we realized there was a big problem that we could help bring that issue of non-adherence and solve it through a way that made the most sense for our pharmacy partners. That's when we felt really great that what we were developing as of last year was something that was going to make a difference and help launch at patients all over the country and to pharmacies that need a solution like this one.
I always say that to some of the guys or gals on my team, especially when sometimes business might be competitive or down or whatever. And it's like, there's no lack of sick people and death, I mean, like the top killer is, heart disease or cancer. And so people can say like, there's no room for certain healthcare people, but it's like, wait a minute. The most important thing to most people is life and health. And the top killers are health and lifestyle. So there's got to be room for it. Now, maybe this one idea isn't what it is, but there's certainly room for it.
Right. And I think that validation continued when we got our first MVP, after about six months of development in July and August, we had our MVP ready to go. We partnered.
What's that?
Our minimum viable product. So it's basically like the first iteration of the solution that we were ready to actually test in the market with real patients at a real pharmacy.
The first model that works, it might not be as small as you want it or as long a battery or whatever, but it's something that at least can get out there.
Exactly.
But let me back up just a second, guys. Tell me about the physical designing of this outside of the battery and the wiring and stuff. I want to learn a little bit more about the plastic of this. It's going to be so high by so round. Did you have to go through the whole tool and die thing, or are these parts that were already out in the market that you kind of could snap together like, Legos or something?
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of what we did was just based around, obviously, market research is the number one step in designing any product. And so probably the first thing that we did was just evaluate all the different pill bottles on the market and said, okay, what do we need to be entirely universal? And that was our first priority. And from there, then we actually kind of designed some of the parts. We knew kind of what the features needed to be and how it needed to work. But the primary focus of it was, can we make it universal so that, needed to be a parameter for any parts that we put inside of it. It's the reason why we selected the chips. It's the reason why we selected the battery that we use. All the different parts were selected for that very reason. But then once we got into the tooling and all the kind of manufacturing of the PCBs, we went outside for that. And we now work with a great engineering firm now in Austin called ProductWorks and Nuvatech. And they do all of our electrical and mechanical engineering for us.
As I kind of mentioned earlier, we found the smallest pill bottle that was offered on the market, measured its dimensions and said, okay, we need to make it small enough to fit comfortably inside of this, which means it should fit comfortably inside of any pill bottle at any pharmacy. And then the second was that we needed a battery that would ensure that we could have at least 90 days, right? Since the average or the most prescribed quantity is a 90-day fill. So it had to last for at least 90 days. And the last thing is that it had to be as low cost as possible. So looking to get closer to that $1 margin, right, per device. And that was kind of the three constraints and goals that we shot for and have, succeeded on, through development.
I see. So when you guys sent this out, I have a friend that makes bird feeders. And for him, it was very integral to say, I'm going to design this because I want this angle to be just like this and stuff. You guys were more of the things that you mentioned, Gavin. You said, hey, we're going to hire this firm. It's got to fit inside this. It's got to fit a battery. It's got to fit this. We're not the pros on how this snaps together, or is it one piece, or is it a this or that? And it's got to be cheap. So you take it and kind of go with this. That sounds like that was closer than you guys figuring out the dimensions on your own. You gave them kind of parameters.
And I think that's really almost a theme in a lot of the stuff that we've done, which was, coming kind of fresh out of college or very young in our business careers. One of the biggest things that we've learned is that if you work with a lot of people who are far more educated in their fields than you are.
That's everybody for me.
Exactly, for us too. And if you can utilize their background, their expertise in a way that's much more efficient, that's just going to work out so much better for everyone involved. And so whether it's engineering or whether it's healthcare or whatever it is, we just try and pull as much information from as many people as possible and use that to our advantage. So that has been a constant theme for us.
A lot of people get this wrong with entrepreneurs. They think that entrepreneurs are just, out there cowboys and taking risk and things like that. But really, a lot of entrepreneurs are really studying the data and all that kind of thing and trying to keep the risk as low as they can. Did you have any point, though, of kind of, when you think of like med students, I think like after 3 years, they call them in and they say, this is your point of no return. If you keep going in med school now, you're at the point where if you fail, you'll never be able to pay this off or something. What was your guys' biggest point of saying, do you really want to do this? Was there a point of that, or has it just been a bunch of little steps all along?
Yeah, I would say for me, Mike, at least, that was probably last year, right? Our manufacturer that we had initially was closed due to COVID in January. We didn't really have the ability to produce a product. We were in the midst of a small legal issue, and we were also in our last semester, and it was one of those things where it's like, if we continue like this, we either forego, doing the formal job search and having something lined up and going out into the, into a field, or continuing with education, or we continue with this. And I think for us, it wasn't a hard decision to make, especially given that, we knew what it was that we were trying to build and had conviction to do it. But it definitely was, the point of no return. And we had a conversation just to say, like, listen, we can kind of pivot into this next solution, PatchRx, develop something meaningful for pharmacies and for patients all over the country, and try to do it during a global pandemic. Or we could, stop here and pause and just finish college, go out and get a job and, do things, kind of our own way. But I think we were both committed enough and so involved at that point that we were full steam ahead. It wasn't really that difficult of a decision to make for us. So,
did you guys both graduate college or not?
I have not. No, I have actually a semester left of college.
Gavin, did you graduate?
I did. I was able to graduate in May 2020.
Andrew, are you going back or are you taking time off for this?
I'm taking time off, and we'll see.
That's better for the movie, right? And did you at least do some of this in your garage?
We did most of this either in a dorm room or any space that we could find.
Dorm room works too. It's got to be a dorm room or a garage. So, all right, I'm just going with this. What legal stuff did you run into?
So one of our early mentors at Patch was one of a board member at Trinity, actually, Doug Conyers.
Patch is the name of the company that you put together then to flow through with this.
That's correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Patch. Yep. And so one of kind of our early mentors, he ran an engineering firm. And we started working with them on kind of the first iteration of our product. Started developing that with them and had a good working relationship with them. And then, I guess around last summer, we were made aware that they were starting to develop their own smart pill bottle cap in some regard. And we were a little taken aback by it and tried to really actually the first kind of idea that we had was when maybe we can find a way to work together on this. I think one of the biggest things that Gavin and I have kept all along is really this perspective on how we can help really the most patients. And it sounds a little bit corny at times, but at the same point, can we get this product out faster? Can we get this product out and make it better? So that was our kind of first judgment was, maybe we can work with these guys and figure out a way to work together on this in some capacity. And quickly realized that was not maybe the full intention from the other party. And so we kind of went on this back and forth kind of deal in, I guess, the fall of 2019. And then at the end of the year, it was expressed that we would not be able to kind of, retain some of the technology that we had developed on our own. And I obviously can't get into too many of the details of these things, but it was a real hurdle for us. It would have made it nearly impossible for us to continue developing anything on our product or any of the IP, any of the product that we had spent a year and a half researching and developing. We would no longer be able to do it.
Because they pretended, I can't use bunny quotes on here, but they kind of pretended that they came up with it and then they got some patent that was maybe a little bit more specific than yours was or something.
They had just retained some of the product. That's really all I can say on it.
They said, hey, this is our stuff. This isn't your stuff. This is our stuff.
Correct. And so we were not able to move forward. And so in December of 2019, we submitted a couple legal pieces to them and said, hey, we need our stuff back or we're going to take some legal action. And they dismissed it in a manner that was a little bit tough for us to see. And so we ended up filing a federal lawsuit in Bexar County in San Antonio against them and their company. And, it's just one of those things that I think companies just tend to go through sometimes. Unfortunately, startups tend to go through it more often than others. And we ended up, things ended up working out in our favor. And we were able to continue working on our product. And we've retained all the necessary materials that we need to have to continue. But, for a startup like ours, especially with us being so young, it really felt like we were taken advantage of completely. And that is such a disheartening thing to feel and to get from someone who really mentored us really early on. So that it was a tough go. And for myself and Gavin, it took, a lot of energy and a lot of time out of our day. And we had to, pause working on a lot of our product to just deal with the lawsuit. So it was tough from that standpoint. Obviously lawsuits are not a cheap thing to go through as well. So obviously it takes a lot out of our funding as well. But, I think it's one of the biggest things that we've had to do, and to get through it is just such a great thing in some ways. It just allows you to see how much passion you have for the work that you're doing, allows you to see how much interest you have in it, and to go through that and come out on the other side with full force and ready to go. I mean, we have pushed so hard since then to get a product out and develop more IP and more safety and be better at our contracts and everything from now on. It has made us better in every capacity, I think.
And it's good for the movie.
And it's great for the movie.
It's great for the movie. We set this podcast up a few months ago, and there was a couple times where you guys had to postpone it. And every time you did, I smiled. I said, that's great, because it was a postponement of, hey, we're traveling to, so-and-so, we're giving a pitch on this, or, we just got picked up by a couple pharmacies, so we're going to meet or something like that. So I'd reply to you, I'd say, wonderful, keep it going. We'll talk eventually. When was the first time, when was it, and what was it that you guys, because, this stuff's great on paper. It's great when the study wants to use it, and it's great when people say this is cool, and your parents say good job, that's all cool. But when was the first time where you made either investors or like you sold this or someone put an order in? I'm not even sure if we're there yet. Have you had any times where it turned green yet?
When we created the MVP in August, we were thankful to find Brandon Allen, the owner of Allen Pharmacy up in North Texas. His pharmacy is right across the street from where I went to high school, which is why I wanted to reach out to his pharmacy. And he was super excited about the potential of the technology and what we were creating, and said, let's do a pilot study. So we decided to put all of our, we only had like 50 or so manufactured units at that point, but decided to put all of them on prescriptions at his pharmacy, on some oral anti-diabetics, in particular, to do a pilot study for 90 days starting in early September. And that was when we got a lot of the validation, because we launched over there. I trained his pharmacy staff. I got to sit behind the counter and see patients and how easy it was for them to set it up, and how easy it was for the pharmacist to understand as well. It was so quick and easy as far as like the setup process, that Brandon Allen actually decided to invest in our company. So it's one of those things where, it's kind of the ultimate validation, right? When someone who owns a pharmacy and is a pharmacist sees the value in his store and then decides to be a part of the company in that manner. So that was kind of the ultimate validation for us. And then as we progressed in that pilot setting, we saw the results, being able to transform the adherence of these particular patients from 70 or 80% all the way above 90% adherent on their medications. It showed us that we were creating something that was intuitive, that people were using. And then it was just a question of how we could continue that success at other pharmacies. So that's what we've been up to, and part of the reason why we postponed was to continue raising this round of investment. We've raised with a lot of pharmacists and other independent pharmacy owners who've similarly said that the technology that we're creating has transformative power, and might be able to really help pharmacy take the next step forward. And then the other is just getting ready for the launches. We have right now 6 or 7 pharmacies on deck that we're going to be launching to this week and next week, and a health system that we're launching to, and then a variety of other avenues that we'll be launching to in later February and throughout kind of the rest of this first quarter of 2021. So been super busy getting everything prepared, getting the logistics set up, and having the supply chain ready. But it's been super exciting, to say the least.
Your professional friend that you grew up across the street from and so on, would that be the proverbial dollar that you frame? Was that your first real money coming in?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool. As far as the business goes, when you say people invest, are they investing in a percentage of the business? Or are they investing just as loans that you're going to pay back to them? How do you go about that?
We raise all on kind of equity deals. And the reason for that, and primarily what Gavin was talking about, a lot of this round has been based in healthcare. We've raised from a lot of angels in healthcare, a lot of institutional investors in healthcare, and then even independent pharmacists and community pharmacists. And the reason for doing that is really just to build our business with the people who are involved in the business. And when you have people engaged that are community pharmacists and the people that care about advancing pharmacy, you see a lot better engagement. You see a lot better products coming out. And so that's what we've done. And the people that we've involved in the company have been phenomenal in the kind of understanding of what we're doing, how we're doing it, and how to make it better. And that's been absolutely crucial in the development.
That's almost like stock they're buying in it. It's not public stock, so it's percentages of the business, and it probably took a hell of a lot of time for you guys to set up what that meant for them, and they get so much either dividends or so much percentage back or something like that. Yeah, and I can see the reason for that too, because especially as you guys as sort of outsiders to the medical place, if you're getting people involved with some equity, especially outside of your field, it seems like a decent move. It's one thing if you were already pharmacists or already healthcare workers and came in, that's part of your story. But now coming in, I can see where equity could help with that. Well, let me ask this. You probably didn't want to though, right? I mean, if it was self-funded, you probably don't want to give stuff away, right? You wouldn't have gone out looking for equity just to get people involved. The number one reason was to get some money to get this going, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, with any startup, the funding and the first dollars in, however much you raise in the kind of initial rounds, it's so crucial to the development of the product and the development of the team too. Once you build out a good team and you have the capital raised to actually build a product and build all the logistics of a supply chain, things kind of work in order. And as long as you're getting good feedback and developing it properly.
Right away, if this thing takes off, you got to have that money input because you guys, as starving college students, you don't have it. And you've got to have money to get these initial orders out and the right people on board with Patch, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of that, then, is it just you two guys?
No, we actually have a decently sized team. Obviously, it's growing just about every day as well. Especially as we kind of continue to launch into pharmacies, we continue to need more development help and engineering expertise and whatever it is. So Gavin and I are the only executives at the moment, but we've got, I think, 6 full-time members now and about 10 advisors and a couple people on, I think 4 or 5 people on kind of independent contractor agreements with us working part-time. And then, yeah, just kind of a myriad of other individuals who are involved in some capacity. But like I said, we're bringing new people onto the team. We've got a couple new executives actually coming onto the team in February that we're super excited about. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just constantly kind of building out the team to try and develop a better product.
Tell me about the 6 that you have. They're not warehouse workers yet. What kind of positions are those, for example?
Yeah, primarily in software development and engineering. 1 in business development, and then the rest are engineers and software developers. And then we've got a couple part-time people in software development as well.
You said you have an executive, you think, coming on. What role is that going to be?
It will be somewhere in the C-level. That is still kind of in the process of getting worked out, the kind of details of that. But yeah, we plan on bringing her on in some capacity at the C-level or kind of that area.
The 3 of you spending more time thinking and planning, where the 6 that you have, maybe they're planning, but not up at the 30 or 50,000 feet level. They're down doing things that you kind of tell them where you want to go. But this executive would be more thinking strategically with you down the road. Yeah,
exactly. And so I think one of the big things that we're kind of moving into, this space that we're kind of moving into, is working with health insurance plans and working with PBMs to engage them at a reimbursement level that's beneficial for the pharmacy and the patient. And when you haven't been in healthcare for that long, the connections just aren't there. And so that's kind of where we're bringing other individuals and executives on to kind of advance those strategic partnerships. And we work primarily more on the integration pieces of taking that 30,000 foot view and taking it in and saying, okay, how can we actually use that to build a product that suffices all these different areas and works for all these different entities?
If a pharmacist is hearing this right now and they're saying, golly, that really sounds cool, when should they be calling you, or what should they be waiting for if they want to get their pharmacy going on this, or will that even be available for them?
We just opened up really 2 weeks ago for full-fledged launches. Like Gavin said, we're launching 3 pharmacies this week. We've got another one next week. We've got a big health system coming up in a couple weeks. And then pharmacies rolling out all through February too. So One of the things that actually we've been working on is really trying to find the best and innovative partners in pharmacy to work with. And that's been a big thing that Gavin has worked just a ton on, is just figuring out which partners we want to go forward with and which partners are going to give us the best feedback to make our product just that much better. But yeah, we're open and running full-fledged in a lot of pharmacies now.
So give me an example of like, what are people buying? How would they roll it out to their customers? Would the customer pay for it? Does the customer actually do the scanning and this and that? And I imagine it's a cell phone app or something like that.
The way that we launch it to them is first we roll out the software, and so the software is a mobile app that the patients can use to add those medications, to manage them. Some other things that the mobile app does is allows them to add their loved ones and other primary care providers to their medication journey, and they'll get notifications when the patient's missed a dose. We also have a rewards functionality that allows for the patient to get financially incentivized to take their medications properly and get rewarded every time they take their dose on time. And they have the ability to refill through our app. They can order that refill directly to their pharmacy. And then at the pharmacy level, we provide them with a web portal that allows for the pharmacist to see all of that individualized adherence data in real time for any of their patients enrolled in PatchRx, and get notifications when a patient has missed a dose, if they've overdosed, and needs to get a real-time health intervention, as well as being able to see those refill orders or any communication that the patient has through the app. So we launch that, and then we just add the devices to that plan. And let's say they've got really low PDC, really low adherence on their oral antidiabetics or their antihypertensives. Maybe it's on their cholesterol medication. We would just see how many patients they have on those medications, how many scripts are filled, and then that would determine how many devices we want to launch to that pharmacy to help bolster and improve the adherence on those medications.
Devices meaning how many cap things you would actually send them, right?
Yes. So how many patch caps we send them, and then we bolster the adherence on that patient population, on that medication or that demographic. If they want to do a full rollout, they absolutely could. But that's what we want to provide them. And so just for the initial setup, we're actually working right now to have a reimbursement strategy so that the pharmacist can actually file a claim through us, saying that what we provided them is a remote patient monitoring solution. So as we get that up and running, and also we have a claims process for the interventions that they can provide through the web app. So when they get that notification that a patient has missed a dose, and then they respond to that by providing a real-time health intervention with that patient, they can also process that. And it's kind of in that medication therapy management or MTM space. And so what we want to provide is something that reimburses the pharmacist for the work that they're doing.
You would then send that to the insurance or the PBM or something, and then they would then reimburse the people somehow or something like that. That money's coming from someone else, whoever the original payer was or something.
Exactly. And that's something that we're actually working with a couple of companies right now on getting that process to be quick and easy. And if we can get those reimbursements just right, the solution will actually pay for itself. So we provide it to the pharmacy. The pharmacy provides it free or at no charge to their patients. That's completely up to them, though. If they want to charge their patients, they totally can. But at the price that we're setting it at, most pharmacies are actually interested in providing it totally free to their patients because they can cover the cost. And then once we get the reimbursements in place, then the cost will pay for itself. And the pharmacy will now have access to a technology and a software that's going to let them provide a real and unique value to their patients at no cost, right? So that's kind of our strategy and where we're going with it.
You guys spoke about increasing the adherence and so on. And my question is like, yeah, but what are we comparing this to? Are we comparing this to what? Because like, how do they even know these adherence numbers to begin with? Do they They call people up and say how many are left, or are they getting it from the pharmacist? Is there enough data out there that your adherence is really measuring up against something? That's so nebulous. Like, what is adherence? You know what I mean?
In essence, PDC, proportions of days covered, is the industry accepted measure for understanding adherence. And essentially what PDC does is measures the number of gap days between when someone should get their refill and when they actually get their refill. So if someone's got a 90-day fill of a medication, they come in at 105 days, that would be 15 gap days. And then they would use those 15 gap days to retroactively try to understand how the patient took their medication. But as you can expect, knowing that someone had 15 gap days doesn't really tell us how they took that medication. For instance, they could have doubled their dose on 15 days. They could have skipped 15 days of their medication. They could have tripled their dose on 5 days, right? There's just an infinite number of ways that they could have not taken their medication to account for those gap days.
It could be that they want to be like more compliant and they took too many, but then at the end they had communication issues or something, right? Back to the pharmacy on getting it filled, or they didn't have the money or whatever. So you have real time data.
Exactly. And it's something that we're really excited about. And eventually that's exactly what we'll be kind of building out is a database that can understand how real patients in the real world take their medications on a daily basis. It's much more granular than PDC, and hopefully will lead us to having the best insights in the market about, patient behavior when it comes to prescription medication, and leveraging that to create better policies, better procedures, and better dosing schedules and medication lists for patients, based off of, their unique history and the conditions they have.
Are there any interesting cases where you think somebody would go around the system on this, where like a grandmother would say, I'm not taking that damn medicine, but I'll open this bottle up 3 times a day to show that I'm, so my granddaughter doesn't try to get me in trouble or something like that? Are there any stories of people trying to get around this, or are there ways to not get around it and so on?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that our kind of methodology for patient-facing solutions is all about positive reinforcement and care. And so, essentially what we're trying to provide for the patient is something that positively reinforces them every time they take their medication correctly. We're not trying to create Big Brother surveillance technology that tracks their doses and tells on them if they do it wrong, but instead creates something that informs them about the medication they're taking, lets them know why they should be taking it, and we have some features in the app that explain to the patient what medications they're taking, why they're taking it, that streamline communication between them and their pharmacist or their primary care providers and family members in a way that we're hopeful, kind of flips the script on taking prescription medication. It's actually one of our overall goals with the company, kind of that future vision is actually helping to change the culture around taking prescription medication, where right now, people are willing to share the steps they've walked, the calories they've consumed, all these metrics with their friends about their health data, but they don't want to share what medications they're taking and how they're taking them, right? There's a lot of secrecy still around, medications, even though 160 million Americans are on at least one prescription medication every year. So, we want to help, change that culture for the better and make it towards, people are more open, they're more honest about their prescription medication and in a way to get healthier. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. I took my medicine, this many times in a row or something like that, like the kids do on, what the hell, Snapchat or something. They say how many days in a row they said hello to their friends or something like that. I wish they would skip one of those and say hi to me once in a while. Yeah, because you guys don't have this as like if they go so many hours past, they're not going to open it and it's not going to turn into a joy buzzer. Do you guys remember joy buzzers?
I do. I'm not sure if Andrew does.
It looks like a ring, but inside you've got this thing about the size of your thing, and it's got a thing, and when you shake someone's hand with it, it hits the buzzer, and it doesn't shock them, but it feels like they got shocked by it. Is it a reminder system too?
Yeah, so it has a reminder system. So when they scan the prescription bottle and add that medication, they can set the reminders. And essentially, the way it'll work is it'll remind them right before their dosing time, at their dosing time, and right after their dosing time. And at any point that they take their medication, the reminders stop. But if they go through all three reminders and they still haven't taken their medication, it'll let their buddies in their care circle know that they're missing a medication, right? And so, a family member can just, message them or ask them, what's going on. And if enough time elapses, then it lets them know that they've now missed the medication entirely. So it helps, provide that first responder system with their closest circle of people, and then their pharmacist or their clinician or their nurse can get involved and provide a real-time health intervention to make sure that there's nothing larger at issue.
Yeah, because it could be that they're not taking it because they've fallen and they can't get up kind of thing. I know a lot of people, they have their like pill packs, like we just set up our 2-week pill reminder thing. Do you guys have anything for something like that down the road of opening up your pill reminder so they're not taking their actual bottles?
Yeah, we're working on it. That is a big piece, though, is those kind of pill packs. And the reason why those pill packs exist is because people don't have any system currently for monitoring
true.
Or managing their medication, which is what we supply.
Yeah, you're right.
We see our solution as a way to kind of reduce the use of those in some capacity, and hopefully it's a much better solution than those. Those are kind of arduous, and you have the problem with, mistaking medication and stuff like that. So
you open up 2 tops and 2 days pop out at once or something like that.
Exactly.
Once you got this down, the sky's the limit on whether this is a bottle or a flat package it doesn't really matter. It's all the same process, basically, right?
Yeah, and the technology that we've, created is really universally applicable too.
For sure. Speaking about that, last question, guys, just out of curiosity, has your mind ever gone to say something like, hey, now that people are using this for pharmacy, this sounds like something they could use for XYZ. Have you come up with any of those XYZs, whether it be, reminding people to change this or do that? I mean, do you have any of those?
Yeah, so just in healthcare alone, I think there's a myriad of options. Geriatric communities, you have pain management clinics, you have clinical research, clinical trials. So, I mean, just within healthcare, you probably have 10 options for where technology like this is applicable. And then you expand from there. And really just the ability, if you think about just about anything, the ability to monitor and track things on a day-to-day basis. Maybe it's shipping or maybe it's, transportation, these kind of pieces. It just provides a lot of insights that people are lacking right now. And so that's why I said, our technology is universally applicable. And I really mean that in the grandest sense, in the sense that it really can be applied in so many different areas. I think for Gavin and myself right now, it's dedication to the healthcare industry. I think there's so many options just in our reach here.
There's a million things. Did the person put their glasses on? Are they up walking around without their glasses? Or did they make it to the bathroom? Did they do this? I mean, all of those are very short jump of you having, instead of having a light sensor on a bottle top, you've got it in their bathroom just to show if the light flipped on or something like that. So yeah, even in healthcare, you'd have more than your hands full probably with that.
Absolutely.
Well, god darn it, guys, congratulations on this.
Thank
wow.
you.
Really cool.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it. This has been a great conversation.
Thanks for letting me mess around and go to some places on that. I'm thinking about the movie here now, not my movie, because you haven't given the rights to it yet to me. I know PatchRx can be talking about, and your website says both. It talks about Patch Adams, keeping people happy and so on with their medicine, but it's also an acronym of Pill Administering Technology for Compliance Healthcare. So which one is the truth? Which one came first, Patch Adams or this acronym?
I actually think the Patch Adams came first. He's always been a health hero of mine. For the listeners that don't know, Patch Adams created the first completely free hospital. There was no cost for anyone involved, no insurance involved. All doctors that were practicing over the course of its 20 years did so on a completely volunteer basis. And his whole methodology and kind of mission behind it was making sure that the patient comes first always, and that compassion is the core component of all healthcare. And so always been a health hero of mine. And once we created the name Patch as kind of an homage to him, it was just, can we fit in an acronym? So
you can always figure an acronym out eventually.
Right.
Yours is actually pretty darn. I mean, that's pretty tight on that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then Patch Adams, that was the late Robin Williams, though, that did a good job in that movie. Well, Gavin and Andrew, boy, best wishes to you guys, and we'll be watching, and congratulations. Thanks for spending your time on the show and with our listeners.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
All right, guys, we'll talk again soon.
Great.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
You've been listening to the Business of Pharmacy podcast with me, your host, Mike Koelzer. Please subscribe for all future episodes.